let's talk about the secret to writing actually compelling stories. We've all done this, right? We've sat down a book or turned off a movie because it stopped holding our attention. And no one wants to write that book, right? So how do we avoid it? Okay, I'm gonna give you 5 strategies for writing a book that people aren't gonna put down after 30 pages. So let's go. So I decided to write a novel in 2011. And I'd never written a novel before. I'd honestly never even written a short story. I was a lawyer who had just left law to decide to launch a writing career. I thought it would take me a year. Instead, it took me 6 years to write my first novel. I kept writing it to please other people. I was trying to fit a mold of what I thought they wanted. Who? People in writing classes I was taking mainly, or teachers of writing classes. And at one point, I sat down to read this draft that I had kind of written by committee, just trying to address the feedback that I was getting in these writing classes and incorporate anything anyone told me to do. And I was bored. I was bored with my own book. My stomach sunk as I realized that, because I knew that if I was bored, the reader was definitely bored, which meant any literary agent I sent this book to was also going to be bored, and I wasn't going to get a book deal. So what had I done wrong? Okay, a couple things. First tip for writing a compelling story and not a boring story is not to write for others. Like I said, that's what I had been doing. I'd been taking these writing classes where I was getting this feedback from my peers in the writing class and just trying to incorporate anything anyone told me to do. I was writing my book by committee. Imagine if someone were designing a house. Okay, we're going to pretend for a second that we are an architect. You're designing a house and you design it by committee. You invite everyone you know to weigh in on what they think the aesthetic of this house should be. And as a result, it ends up with Greek columns and a rustic barn door and some pop art and a red roof. It's a mess, right? It has like all of these aesthetics because everyone had a different vision and you tried to incorporate all of them into the same thing. That's what it's like when you try to write a book based on feedback from other people. You are the only one with the vision. You have the interesting ideas inside you, and you have to respect those ideas so that they'll come out into your work. It's very difficult, maybe even impossible, to write a compelling story if you're just trying to please other people who are giving you feedback on your draft. Tip number 2 is think about why you have this vision. Okay, so you have some kind of vision. There's something in you that wants to come out, or you wouldn't be writing the book in the first place. Why are you writing it? What is the big question that you are trying to explore through this story? We read to understand humanity differently. We read for internal struggle, even in action stories. Every year, I get at least a handful of emails from people, usually men, who want to tell me about a brilliant plot of their book idea, a plot that will change the world. They say, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. And none of these plots has ever once felt that special to me. And it's not because they were bad. They weren't bad plots necessarily. It's because plot isn't the story itself. Plot is the means to tell the story. The story itself takes place in the characters' souls, in their hearts and minds. And to get to that internal story, you have to know what big question they are asking, okay? And plot is just teeing up that big internal question that we're really reading about. Tip 3 is that stuff has to happen, okay? So even though the story is really taking place internally, a novel isn't just someone sitting there having thoughts. Stuff has to happen. I actually have a mantra I tell myself when I'm writing, which is something beats nothing. It's very simple, but it works. Something beats nothing. So when I'm trying to decide what scene to write next, and my options are this person is suffering from a breakup, she's grieving, and she could either go smash his car or cry herself to sleep or just sit there. Well, either of the first 2 work because they're taking action, smash his car, cry herself to sleep, but sitting there doesn't work. That's nothing happening. So something beats nothing. Now, if you have a passive character, you may think, but this character doesn't do active things often. They're like a very passive character and that's part of the story. That's fine, but how do they act privately? Do they act self-destructively? What actions are they taking to express the kind of struggle that they're having internally or the pain they're feeling inside? Because no one does nothing with their pain, right? It may be secret, it may be private, but we all do something. Speaking of doing something, I would love for you to like and subscribe, because on this channel, you're gonna learn how to actually get your book written, how to cross the finish line to becoming a professional writer, and how to do it joyfully. Because writing doesn't have to be scary and painful. In fact, it can and should be fun most of the time. So let's make writing fun again and get your best book done together. Okay, so like this video and subscribe. I have plenty more tips and tricks I'm excited to share with you. Okay, and with that, let's get back to our last steps. Step number 4 is that your main character needs to shift their perspective because of what has happened. So a story is really a shift in perspective. That's one way of understanding it. A story is just a shift in perspective. It can be a big shift or a small shift, but that's ultimately what it is. And in your story, that shift in perspective that your main character experiences is because of what has happened, because of the plot, what they've gone through. Step 5 is that you must be willing to revise. Now, I've never loved the saying that every first draft is crap or whatever. That never made me want to write a first draft. Though, why am I going to waste my time writing something that's terrible? But a first draft is just one version of your story. And I like to think about it that way. You're writing one version of your story. You're going to have to revise in order to pull out the best version. So some of that first draft will stay and some of it will go. Revision is a part of every writer's process. One of my favorite authors is George Saunders, who is also a great writing teacher. And George Saunders said once that there were 2 things that distinguish writers who published with writers who didn't. And one of them was a willingness to revise. Revision is a huge part of writing. Okay, I hope you found those tips really helpful. If you're ready to finish your novel, as a 3-time published novelist and writing coach, I've put together a free training for you on how to write your dream book while holding down a full-time job or keeping your life, whatever that is. And in this training, I teach you the exact process I use to write my books. All you have to do to get this free training is apply to my program, The Book Incubator. The application is just 2 questions. You can do it in under 5 minutes. There's no obligation to join the program, but if you're admitted, I'll send you that free training right away. So you've got nothing to lose except years of your life dreaming about writing this book without writing it. So click below to apply and get the free training to watch right away. It'll be worth your time, I promise.